Obsession. A true story. The unfolding of a very complex process of obsession, with its main roots planted deep in the mysterious soil of past incarnations, with many implications projected into the future of those involved.
Hello, beautiful friends, and welcome to another study session of the book Obsession, psychographed by the medium Divaldo Pereira Franco, inspired by the spirit Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. Today we have a very revealing journey, dear friends. We notice throughout our study that God's mercy has absolutely no end, because even during sleep time we are blessed with the opportunity to receive spiritual treatment, spiritual counseling, and to reconcile with loved ones that we at times misguide through our less informed actions. This is why, dear friends, our Master of all Masters, the doctors of all souls, advised that we watch and pray so that we are able to tap into our divine potential and act with love and kindness towards everyone around us, seeking the good, visualizing the good, feeling the good, and molding the good with all of our resources as recommended by the Spirit Emmanuel in the book Thought and Life. Let this be, dear friends, our New Year's resolution to watch our thoughts, feelings, and attitudes, striving to seek the good in everyone and in everything that we encounter, one day at a time, so that we may be collaborators of the loving spirit entities that guard our existences, that lovingly and charitably give of themselves to us unconditionally, as we see throughout this book, Obsession, that all of us are watched and cared for. So let us begin this loving year of 2018 by expressing love to all of those loving brothers and sisters in the spiritual realm who may be invisible to our physical eyes, but who are very much dear to our hearts and who have the best of our interests at heart. We thank them lovingly with our hearts filled with joy for their taking interest in us and for their being emissaries of God's unconditional love ever present in our lives. We thank them for helping us devise our reincarnatory plan. We thank them for helping us grow spiritually. We thank them for the loving suggestions they bless us with every day. We thank them for their guiding us during our physical sleep. We thank them for supporting and loving the spiritual entities that are in our network. We thank them for sharing knowledge with us, particularly the knowledge provided to us in this book, so that we may know more of life eternal, understand ourselves better, and therefore be better equipped to love one another as our Master Jesus recommended to us. Let us make the commitment to love ourselves, love God, and strive, making efforts every day, including during our physical sleep, to better ourselves and to bring out the best in us every day of these 365 opportunities that God has granted us in this year that is just beginning right now. Let this year be blessed with many lovingly and transformational opportunities, such as the ones that we are going to see in the study of tonight. Let us pray so that the transformations we hear about in this true loving account may inspire us in each step that we take, not only today, but in every day of the year to come. Thank you, God, for the gift of life. Thank you, God, for the gift of knowledge. Thank you, God, for the gift of understanding. Thank you for providing us with Kardec Radio and allowing us to be united as one family, striving to become the best version of ourselves with your loving help. So be it. Enjoy, dear friends.
Chapter 20, A Trip to the Past. Spirits Book, Part 3, Chapter 10. Item number 872. The question of free will may thus be summed up. Man is not fatally led into evil. The acts he accomplishes are not written down beforehand. The crimes he commits are not the result of any decree of destiny. He may have chosen, as trial and as expiation, an existence in which, through the surroundings amidst which he is placed, or the circumstances that supervene, he will be tempted to do wrong, but he always remains free to do or not to do. I was told to escort the Santa Marias home and wait there until it was time to bring them back to the meeting room for the second part of our work that night. On the way home, the couple had retreated into silence, but I could easily follow their thoughts, which revolved around the scenes they had just lived through. At home, they talked about the evening's incidents and had a light meal before retiring. Colonel Santa Maria had finally overcome the anguish that Matthias's revelations had caused him and was again hopeful and happy. He was grateful to God for the opportunity to make up for his faults, which had been the starting point for that painful drama. His home, now protected by their constant prayers, good reading, and meditation, presented a superior psychosphere quite different from the first time we had been there. That particular night, before going to bed, they read an inspirational message selected from a mediumistic book they kept on a bedside table and said their prayers. Slowly, they sank into sleep. It was then my turn to act. I helped them out of their physical bodies into astral projection and took them back to the meeting room. When we arrived there, I saw some other spirit friends who were also cooperating with Bezerra and had conducted other incarnate members of the mediumistic team. I was surprised at the ease with which the medium Joel moved around. He looked very happy to be with his departed wife. He introduced her to us and told us that whenever she had permission, she joined him in similar tasks. His balanced attitude of self-reliance and the gentle confidence of his eternal bride impressed me greatly. Meeting in the astral plane to work and serve together relieved the pain of their temporary physical separation. I felt like asking the lady how she managed to help her husband, since they lived in different spheres now, but they walked straight to our other friends with joy flooding from their hearts before I had time to do this. When it was about time to begin the meeting, Bezerra asked for silence and concentration while he left for the hospital to fetch Esther. He took myself and my brother Melquiades along with him. once in the hospital, he helped Esther out of the dense fluids of matter, and carefully we carried her astral body, still in deep sleep, to the meeting room in the society. The girl's health had improved considerably since our work had begun. Brother Melquiades had been visiting her regularly for magnetic treatment, and she was also having some respite while Matthias was kept away from her in our circle for treatment. Instead of recurring crises of apathy and aggressiveness, she was now able to do some thinking on her own, which was very refreshing to her. Unfortunately, the irresponsible people who should have been taking care of her at the hospital had instead neglected her completely. Because of that, they did not know of the growing improvement of her condition. Only the nurse Rosangela noticed every slight change in the girl's behavior and commented on them to her parents, so rousing their hopes and enthusiasm. Many doctors and nurses think they have nothing else to do when classical therapy fails. For that reason, they leave their patients to themselves, tired of them, and convinced that they're wasting their time on incurable cases. However, they forget the therapy of love and the psychotherapy of understanding and attention. When Dr. Pinel, the French psychiatrist, was criticized for unchaining his patients at Bicêtre, Paris, his colleagues asked him ironically, "What if you can't cure them?" "I shall love them," Dr. Pinel answered. "I shall make them feel like human beings again. I shall give them attention." When all Earth techniques and methods are armed, both with the resources of technology and the inspiration of Jesus' teachings, then much pain will be avoided and great benefits obtained. Back in the meeting room, we placed Esther near her parents, who were also immersed in deep sleep. The preparations for the meeting had already begun, with many activities going on. Special appliances resembling regular home resistance heaters used to clean the local psychosphere had been set to work. They produced special heating waves and, at the same time, provided infrared and ultraviolet bulbs used to destroy inferior thought forms which presented themselves in strange worm-like shapes. Such thought forms were the result of the inferior idioplasty of some members of the mediumistic group, and also of the sick girl's mental activities. I noticed sound and image equipment which was used by the spirit workers in the regular rescue meetings conducted in the society. The equipment broadcast the dialogues and general activities out of the society's premises to the street, meaning to reach passerbys and help their awakening. A small crowd of restless and sick entities had gathered on the doorstep, attracted by the evangelical lessons. Despite the noises and insults the most ignorant entities threw around, some of them, however, were really touched and became quite receptive. Those were later taken in for convenient treatment. The equipment I have just referred to also supplied the spirit director with valuable information on the subjects needing his immediate attention and helped to diagnose the illness of incarnate sitters who had asked guidance on their health problems. It helped to determine particularities of the aura, whose condition determined the kind of help to be rendered. Another mechanical device, similar to a regular hairdryer, was used to induce deep hypnosis, during which positive thought forms were implanted in the patient's unconscious. These thought forms would act as vigorous life seeds, producing new idioplasties which would later be the roots for new moral uplift. There were also an assortment of little boxes, some to ascertain the range of vibrations of the spirit patients, some to check the results of treatment, and others to collect and record data. An all-complex maze of extremely useful precision equipment. What I have just reported and described does not mean that these spirit workers are ministering angels with total knowledge and wisdom. They are just evolving spirits like ourselves, but who have accumulated diversified experiences along the road of progress and build up a spiritual wealth which gradually heightens their spiritual stature. Moreover, it is in the spirit world that many a delicate and complex apparatus is first created and later brought to the plane of matter by missionary entities who incarnate to materialize them on the earth plane, so improving the techniques of civilization and contributing to the progress and development of humanity. The time had come to begin work. Bezerra told us to wake the sleeping participants of our group, but led each one of them within his personal range of psychic and spiritual perception. We learned that each mind, being both an aptitude fixer and selector, allows the spirit to utilize only the existing information stored away in the perispirit. He cannot go beyond this because his specific gravity will not permit him to move about or stay within a vibratory sphere higher than the dense vibrations of the physical body. Thus, man is what he thinks, because out of his mental sources flow all his achievements. If his mental sources are polluted by constant base thoughts and disharmony, adjustment is not easy and cannot be obtained too quickly. Whether in or out of the physical body, people must live in the world they have created. Likewise, the spirit who nurses noble aspirations is able to dispel the dense and heavy vibrations of matter and attune to higher frequency spiritual waves from the higher spheres. Consequently, his perispirit is refined, growing free from the narrower limitations of the physical body. According to the facts mentioned above, we could observe that the reactions of the incarnates brought to the meeting in astral projection varied considerably. Some showed perplexity, others fear, while a few others, though surprised at first, showed a great joy to be there, quite aware of the reasons for their presence. Matthias was still asleep, and Esther, though awake, was detached from the environment. The incarnates were arranged in an almost closed circle, Bezerra standing at its head. Colonel Sobrera, quite lucid, stood by Bezerra. His spiritual condition stood out in the group, surpassed only by the medium Joel, who, anchored in a strong faith and tireless devotion to service, had attained a considerable spiritual richness, which he placed entirely at the service of his fellow men. Following a strict discipline, Bezerra said a long prayer, preparing us to begin the meeting. Lord Jesus, though still imperfect servants, we come here ready to administer the fraternal charity you taught us, giving us the example of self-denial and sacrifice. Because we are still imperfect beings, we lack the capacity for sound judgment and adequate action. Because we are still closer to human discretion than to spiritual discernment, we are often unable to act properly and say the right word. We think slowly and behave obtusely. Consequently, when asked to help, we sometimes act like spoiled children who demand things ready and now, too impatient to wait and trust. Aware of all these limitations, we seek your inexhaustible kindness, asking for help, inspiration, and enlightenment. We know we are neither blessed entities nor heralds of truth. We are equally needed spirits who see in the troubles of our fellow men our own needs and limitations. Yet, in spite of our needs, we long to join our hands in service so that we may Yet, in spite of our needs, we long to join our hands in service so that we may act as modern Serenians, helping those who have fallen down under the weight that imprudence and folly put on their shoulders, to pick themselves up again and walk on. Enrich us with love, so that our word may soothe and encourage, our energies may vitalize, and our effort may link us to you. Be you the director of the noble task you have given us. As he finished his prayer, he began to radiate a sapphire light that enhanced his angelic beauty. After a pause of a few minutes, he told us, "My friends, we have met here to study the Esther Matthias problem extensively. A few hours ago, at the end of this meeting on the physical plane, we heard Matthias claim to have been cheated by Esther's father, and as a consequence, that he had granted himself the right to retaliate, to which he is not really entitled. Moreover, the alleged offense, in which he also includes his mother and sister, is in fact quite irrelevant. Anyway, were he right, then Esther would be paying for her father's debt. Were this true, we would be detecting a serious flaw in the divine laws that govern life. So we must search deeply into Esther's problem in order to reveal her association with the obsessor in a life prior to this. We are not moved by mere curiosity, but we need to learn the truth to be able to act accordingly and help her effectually. We will find that a few friends of theirs are also involved in the drama because, as members of the vast universal family, we are continuously tying ourselves to one another through heavy moral debts or setting ourselves free from them through convenient reparation. So let us forget the ego and dismiss personal problems and conflicts to fully dedicate ourselves to the superior aims of service. May the Lord keep us and assist us, he ended. The incarnate listeners looked naturally concerned, but showed no trace of fear or doubt. Esther's parents were worried but sincerely contrite. Colonel Sobrero was serene and confident. Joel, assisted by his wife, stood by Esther, showing perfect spiritual balance. The others were united in prayer, a practice in which they had been carefully trained in their regular rescue meetings. Becerra approached Matthias and gave him some long passes which awoke him. At a previously arranged signal, Melquiades did the same to wake Esther. She took a longer time to recover consciousness. She was, however, less stunned than when we took her parents to see her in the hospital. She looked much better, which is easy to understand. With Matthias away from her, she was free from his unwholesome fluids and his negative telepathic control. Fully awake now, Esther looked around for a while, trying to find her bearings. Then she saw her parents. She ran up to her father and threw herself in his arms, showing a great joy but also complaining of her unhappy predicament. The distressed parent looked to Becerra as if to ask permission to talk. Becerra nodded with a faint smile. "Trust God, my little one," Colonel Santa Maria exclaimed affably. "Today's sorrows foreshadow tomorrow's freedom, just as the tears we shed now are a result of the prison walls we built around us in the past and which have followed us into the present." "But I'm crazy, Dad," she replied dolorously. "But I'm crazy, Dad," she replied dolorously. "I'm kept in a cage like a wild animal. I've no friends near me, no sunshine, no hope. I've been abandoned. Not even you or Mother come to see me. Why is this so, Father?" "Mad are we when we hurt and wrong others," he answered thoughtfully. "This is real madness. But when we suffer, we are on the way to freedom. The mind's imbalance is temporary, but the soul's takes a long time to be restored. Don't worry any longer, my dear. Everything is being cleared up, and soon, God willing, the problems will be settled and our peace regained. We visited you many times, but then your doctors advised us not to go near you so that they could proceed with the treatment. They believed our presence would disturb you more." "I wish I knew," the girl began, but her father silenced her tenderly, telling her to be quiet and invited her to pray with him. Only when the man had finished talking did I realize that Becerra had been mentally controlling the father's words. I understood then that all the events of the evening must stay under careful control if we were to get to the desired results. Esther was again turned to Brother Melquiades' competent hands. He calmed her down using sound telepathic suggestions. Matthias, assisted by Brother Angelo, and now fully awake, unable to control himself, asked, "Haven't we agreed to wait for the results of the captain's attempt to rehabilitate himself? Why must I confront him again?" He looked around and on seeing Esther, shouted angrily, "What is she doing here?" The girl shuddered and began to scream. Her whole appearance changed suddenly. Terror was substituted for serenity, and her face became a mask of horror. Apparently, Becerra was expecting such reactions, for he continued in meditation, unperturbed. Although fully under Brother Melquiades' mental control, Esther rose to her feet, showing unexpected aggressiveness. She walked over to Matthias and yelled angrily, "I hate you. Yes, I hate you." And she laughed insanely. Brother Angelo began to work upon Matthias' cerebral center, forcing him to plunge into his past life memories. But it was Esther who first stepped into the past. "I remember you now, you miserable traitor," she said. "You betrayed me and I made you pay for it. I did punish you, but I didn't forgive you. You don't reject a woman who has money and position and get away with it." Matthias acknowledged the violent diatribes, and himself, remembering the past, replied, "Oh, I must have known it all the time. I did hate your father, but I enjoyed hurting you. Everything is crystal clear now, you miserable witch." "My father?" she asked incredulously, ignoring his last words. "You know quite well I have no father." Matthias was about to retort, but Becerra redirected him otherwise and continued his reasoning. "How come I didn't see it clearly before? It's him, all right. The very same scheming rascal. Look at him," he told Esther. "Try to remember. His face has changed a little, but he's the same. The miserable lover of yours. The hateful executioner of your foul sentences. I don't know who is meaner, the mastermind or the executioner. Oh, never mind that. What difference does it make anyway? You both are in the same boat and you'll get the same pay. And mind you, I won't be talked down. I never liked him anyway." "It's my turn to revenge," Esther insisted. "You exploited me. You stole my money and left me to rot while you went off with another woman. I'd never let you get away with it, of course. I had to have you killed, and I'd do it again if I had to. My hatred is still fresh." "You're wrong there," said Matthias. "I'm the boss now, and I mean to kill you." The bitter argument went on amidst mutual accusations and insults. What was happening, in short, was this. The shock of confronting Matthias awakened Esther's past life memories, stored in her deep unconscious mind. She was then compelled to relive the dramatic scenes that depicted the turbulent days of her previous reincarnation. The whole plot was clear to us now. The poor insane girl, apparently suffering from the consequences of her father's error, was in fact herself a debtor. She kept within herself the basic material for obsession. The ancient hatred soared in the depths of her soul. It provided a convenient outlet where Matthias could plug in his rage. Old partners in crime, they were perfectly attuned. And because they had refused to cultivate true love that sublimates and illumines the soul, the strong hands of the divine laws had placed them in the same crucible. Let us hope one day man will understand that it is only through love that he will speed up his spiritual ascent. In the heat of the Esther-Matthias quarrel, Becerra interfered. "Friends," he said, "let's be sensible and charitable. You're both evoking the past, and we can see that you're still entangled in your inferior passions, right down to the bones, and seem to be determined to hold on to them. Yet Jesus, whom you both claim to love, warned us that only forgiveness illumines the soul and delivers it from darkness. You have hurt one another and are both responsible for your own difficulties. To recall past events, only to quarrel over them and insult each other, will not help you. You've been brought here to begin anew, to make the necessary adjustments and program your future. You should regard yesterday's bitter experiences as a warning against new mistakes. They should be a lesson you must now put to good use, converting them into positive actions in your daily lives." While he talked, the spirit nurses forced Esther and Matthias into silence so that they could listen carefully. Joel walked up to Esther, now totally transfigured into a Portuguese lady of the 19th century, and made her sit down. She obeyed, her face showing pride and uncontrollable anger. Having accommodated her, Joel approached Matthias and made him sit down also. The obsessor, likewise transfigured, looked young and handsome. The signs of deformation due to his violent death during World War II had disappeared completely. The extraordinary transfiguration we were witnessing had only been possible because of the modeling power of the mind over the extreme plasticity of the astral body. Matthias's and Esther's strong hatred, frantically stirred up by the vivid memories of the past, imprinted on their spirit bodies the distinctive characteristics of the personality they had animated in the previous reincarnation. The two entities quiet now, Becerra resumed his exhortations. "You'd better stop your reciprocal insults," he said calmly. "Nobody here is going to judge you, condemn you, or forgive you. We must let you dive into the memories of your past lives as Casimiro and Eduardina to settle your differences as Matthias and Esther. The past must be a starting point to progress, not a meeting point for more errors. Real victory belongs to those who forgive and serve, avoid evil and devote themselves to good, appease sorrows and restore confidence. It is up to you to end this tumultuous conflict. And listen," he warned. "Opportunity comes and goes. Those who miss it are left behind to wait for the next time. He who wants to soar high will find peace. Those who insist in flying low will end in the marsh, confined to damp, narrow spaces where the sun never shines." Colonel Santamaria, unable to control himself, burst into tears. In his commotion, he suddenly held his head with both hands and pressed it tightly, as if it were about to split. Becerra approached him and applied some magnetic pauses, saying patiently, "Remember, son, remember so that you can meet your conscience and work out its purification. Let's go back in time. Let's return to Portugal, to the city of Braga in the 18th century. Think of the news about the French Revolution. Think of Braga, the very heart of faith. Remember the Braganças, natives of the ancient fortress of Guimarães. Think and remember." Silence fell in the room. Only Becerra's calm, vibrant voice was heard. The rest of us were firmly concentrated in prayer. Eduardina Esther stared wildly at Colonel Santamaria, and Casimiro Matthias shifted restlessly in his seat, as if fearing unpleasant happenings to come. In an age regression process under the strong suggestion of Becerra's command, another transfiguration took place. Esther's father's figures changed completely, and before us stood a totally different man, an angular, broad-cheeked, emaciated face, large eyes, aquiline nose, sideburns and a goatee, a projected chin and a bald head. With this disgusting appearance, he grunted, "Hail Braga, Portugal's eternal sanctuary, birthplace of knights, saints, and noblemen. God bless you."
Dear friends, how amazing this chapter is for us. So much loving nourishment for our souls, right? Isn't it beautiful to know for a fact, a documented fact, that love is ever present in our lives, that even when our body is at rest, we may choose through the use of our free will to sleep intelligently, which we learn through the Spiritist philosophy that involves asking our spirit mentors for guidance and taking advantage of physical rest to receive treatment, to receive counseling, and even undergo disobsession treatment. Disobsession treatment, as portrayed so beautifully and realistically in the chapter we just heard, allows for us, through the guidance of doctors and mentors and therapists in the spiritual realm, to provide our spirit companies with the opportunity to be rescued for a better life, for more learning opportunities. Usually, as we could hear, we become attached to certain spirit entities when at some point in our spirit journeys there is some sort of emotional trauma which either ourselves or our spirit companions are not able to resolve. So as we need therapy also in the physical realm, therapy is equally provided in the spiritual realm. We see in the particular chapter of tonight that this therapy in the spiritual realm of spirit rescue can take many forms, including that of regressing therapeutically to a past life. That doesn't mean that we should or could seek for regression on a daily basis. Of course not. The gift of the present is very beautiful, so we need to practice being fully present in our reincarnation. But during sleep time, when we are living as spirits, experiencing our true life, we may be guided by loving spirit doctors to regress to the past safely and securely, very thoughtfully and wisely, to resolve traumas that we need to dissolve from within our spiritual bodies and minds, so as to progress, to move forward in our spiritual evolution. So we may not even need to seek for this kind of therapy in the physical realm, because now we know through this beautiful chapter that this kind of therapy is present if necessary and available if necessary in the spiritual realm, and that the mentors will always offer us the kind of therapy that we need the most. So it is beautiful to see, dear friends, that our loving mentors in the spiritual realm have many loving resources to care for us and to boost our spiritual progress. How can we help them? We can help them by practicing prayerful attitudes, mindful attitudes throughout the day. As the loving Spirit Doctor Bezerra de Menezes mentions in the chapter we just heard, thought is life. We are a byproduct of our mental currents, of the thoughts with which we feed our hearts and souls. So if we would like to free ourselves as a good New Year resolution from any trauma, from any difficult or heavy emotion that we may still carry in our hearts, a good starting point is to change the nature of our thoughts. How may we do that? By doing a God at home. What is a God at home? As the Santa Marias have shown us, a God at home is a prayerful moment in which we read an inspirational message from a book of our choice. We comment on this inspirational message and we ask our spirit mentors to accompany us in a prayer. This God at home is an opportunity to literally invite God into our home, not only physically but also spiritually, because the home of the spirit is the mind. So we can constantly reprogram the nature of our thoughts by engaging in a meditative, prayerful moment, by sharing affirmations like, I love and approve of myself, I free myself of guilt and resentment, and I'm ready to experience life joyfully. Those are beautiful affirmations that we can affirm to ourselves so as to change our mental currents for the better. As we notice in the chapter we just heard, the reason why our dear Esther was attached to the spirit entity that was incurring negative vibrations onto her is because she carried guilt and resentment in her heart. So in our turn, if we would like to free ourselves from spiritual disturbances of any sort, we need and can bless our own selves with living a guilty-free life. Of course, we are perfectible, but we haven't reached perfection yet. So how do we do that? How do we free ourselves from guilt? By affirming that we choose to live a guilt-free life, that we choose to let go of guilt and resentment. If our dear Esther had done that in her life, she could have freed herself from these negative influences, and the spirit surrounding her could have learned from her example as well. So why not make this our New Year resolution? Inspired by this chapter of the book Obsession, let us commit, dear friends, to living a guilt and resentment-free life one day at a time. Thank God we have beautiful, never before lived 365 new opportunities to practice living a joyful, loving life free of guilt, hurt, and resentment. This is what we at the Kardec Radio family, or from the Kardec Radio family, wish to each and every one of you. May this year be blessed. May you truly have a happy new year inside of your loving heart. You are very much loved. We love each and every one of you, and we are blessed by the gift of you. Happy, happy New Year.